Okay, well, I hope everyone can hear me. This is Allan Armitage, and I am sitting in my cluttered office in beautiful Athens, Georgia, and I will get off the blocks right now and invite you to come see me. And certainly after I'm done, I have to do it now because after I'm done, you probably won't want to come anywhere near this place. So we'll just try our best to have a good time. It's Horticulture Webinar Wednesday, and if this is a 100th anniversary, yeah, good for you guys. That's all I can say. If you can keep something going this long, 3 years, and you have keen gardeners, then let's do it. So I'm going to get into this. There's a couple of things I have to tell you about. Number one, the most important thing is this is gardening. It's not brain surgery. It's not rocket science. It's gardening. If you don't like it, don't do it. It's supposed to give you pleasure. If it's all it is work and you cuss and curse every day, then go get yourself a yard boy. But as far as gardening, if you like the stuff, it becomes a passion, and hard to say just how much you like this stuff. But the fact is, if you're keen, you are probably my kind of people. Now, I usually give these talks in front of a live audience, and I see you smiling, laughing, or other things that may not be repeated, but so I'm just gonna figure that I'm the greatest speaker ever and that you're just absolutely loving this stuff. So as we go through this thing, this is the important part. It's time to put down the shovels, stop worrying about the weather. We're going to sit back and enjoy our time together. So let's do this. You know, COVID, politics, crazy people, I mean, why are there crazy people out there? Holy Hannah! Thank God I've got a garden. I don't even read the newspaper anymore. Sometimes this whole ostrich in the head in the sand thing actually makes great sense. But I've got a couple of cool things going for me, and one of them for sure is the garden. You know, this whole vaccination thing. Well, what can I tell you? Just get vaccinated. I just can't figure this out. But I, for one, am weary of depressing news. So, however, if COVID has taught me anything, now listen to me, listen to me. I'm at the dentist, and it's sort of between and betwixt COVID. I'm got my this lovely. Her name is Kelly, by the way. This lovely dental technician is in my mouth doing all the awful things, and she says, Doctor A, she says, you know what I miss most about COVID? And I'm going, oh boy, yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to say to her, and she ignores me, which is normal. And then she says, what I miss most is I have nothing to look forward to. And I left that dental chair, and I have nothing to look forward to. And it reminded me of why gardeners are such pleasant people, because we always have something to look forward to. We plant a seed, we look forward to its germinating. We plant a bulb in the fall, and we look forward to it in the spring. We wait all winter. We're always looking forward. We actually believe plant catalogs. That's how optimistic we are. So I think it's just terrific that we have something to look forward to. And so I have long ago given up on the fact. I no longer apologize for anything we do. We are as essential as anybody else. COVID showed us that. COVID showed us how many people got in the garden, how many people wanted plants, how many young people wanted house plants or succulents or whatever else. We want to be there, and we are part of that. So if you are people who are spreading the word, not just listening to the word, but also spreading it, don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed to be out there in your hands and knees, a silly looking hat. Speaking of which, this is me, and this is my silly looking hat. And I've been wearing this for a long time. And so I'm as silly looking as you are, believe me. And I don't apologize for it, because I always have something to look forward to, even pulling those damn weeds. Not that I really want to do it that much, but boy, it sure feels good after you've done it. Anyway, so that's what I'm up to. But I also, I get around a wee bit. I talk to gardeners over the country. Hell, I talk to gardeners over the world, it turns out. And I'm very much involved in the industry, greenhouses and plant breeders and new plants and all sorts of cool stuff. But you know, I learned that when our backs are sore and our knees hurt and the weeds are winning, we still believe this will be the best year ever. We do. We're cool. So no wonder. I don't know about your neighbors. I know my neighbors think I'm nuts, but no wonder our neighbors think that we perhaps just are a wee bit crazy. But you know, we're gardeners, and I don't know. We may be a little off. No doubt in my mind, we are a little off. But uh, you know, we have passionate gardeners, and maybe you're one of them. And maybe if you might recognize someone like this, it started off as a hobby, then it became an obsession, and finally one day she went in there and hasn't been heard from since. Do you know anybody like that? I know if I was in front of you in a real live audience, you'd be laughing and looking at each other, because that's a little bit about what we do. And I did learn a few things about a gardener, and certainly based on experience. I'm quite sure that married couples really shouldn't do this together. Now, some of you do it and make it. I think it's terrific. But they probably should have their own space. I'm not sure, if any of you have been in this kind of situation. My wife she just keeps accusing me of taking more grass out and putting more plants in. And I just feign ignorance as the plants spill over the lawn. But hey, that's the way it is. Okay, so the making of a garden. Now, this is cool because I'm going to use the D word, and that's going to really scare you. So here's our lovely little home sweet home in Athens, Georgia. It's not little, it's a lovely home, 1980, 2009. There were beautiful gardens everywhere. You come to that place, it's fantastic. Look at those gardens. They're spectacular. That's a spring, obviously, spring in Georgia, spring in Kentucky. We know what that's like. Beautiful. And, but oh no. We couldn't leave well enough alone. No. So we used the D word. We decided to downsize. Now, I bet you many of you in the audience are thinking about downsizing. Well, I want to tell you, downsize we did. Who did we downsize? So we bought a home that was in need of just a little bit of maintenance. So when you saw that first picture, say it was very lovely. This is what we bought. 900 square feet and crying out for love. Now, of course, the kids have left. It's just Susan and I. So we decided to downsize. Well, you can see it's crying out for love. So this is what we're going to do today, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the making of a garden. Confusion to contentment. And it is confusion because the back was not much Martha Stewart either. It really had a long way to go. So we started to make just a few changes. Oh, I wish I could see your faces when I show that first picture because everybody just, their mouths drop. So here's a few changes. It was time. Are you cringing yet? You've been there. This is the downside. You say, you gotta be kidding me. Well, anyway, so this is going on for quite some time. And Athens, Georgia, by the way, is a very old town. And it's, of course, the University of Georgia's here. But it was always a very, it was cottages. And that's, of course, what we got. And there's some huge mansions here now. It's all different, of course. But we're living in an area called Five Points. And it's a lovely place. It truly is. And but you wouldn't know it by looking at what you're looking at now. But we're getting there. Look, we're making it look at it. It's actually starting to look like sort of something. Things are coming along, and look, my goodness, it looks like a house. But a long way to go before it's beautiful. So we put in a driveway, we put in a walkway, and so we have a garden area. Now what? Well, let's put in some turf. My wife loves turf. And let's put in a few beds. And we did that. So I am going to show you now. It's starting to look like a garden. just a bit. Now, here's an old pecan tree. So this is what was there was pecan tree, a crepe myrtle tree, a peach tree, and a privet tree. Essentially, that was what was there. Everything you're seeing is different. This is a year ahead. So in the spring, we decided to put some stuff around this pecan bed. And it looked to be promising because there was a lot of stuff that looked like it was growing. I don't know. I'll show you what all this stuff is. See, the grass isn't really too looking too good. Um, and but a year later, that's the pecan bed. So this is 2014. I think it was 2010 or so we got in there. It took a few years, but not that much. About 2011, by the time we actually started putting things in, and there you go. So that's pretty cool. At least I liked it anyway. The other thing about gardening, remember, it's your garden. Nobody else likes it. Tough luck, as long as you do. And the back, well, the back was coming around. It was in looking at July 2009 or 10. I think that's wrong. It's 10. But then again, we had an old privet and there's an old peach tree. Peach tree got so big, we ended up taking it down. The privet is still there, believe it or not, because I love the cedar waxwings that come in. But we got a deck, and there it goes. A little later, a place to wander around with a cup of tea or a glass of wine. I do a lot of whining in the garden. I mean, what is a garden for? Not to take your cup of tea in the morning or coffee and your wine in the evening. We sit in the deck and we watch the birds. I'm a big bird person as far as garden birds, but it looks pretty cool. And that's what it looks like. Shoot, May 2022. I guess that was just a few months ago, wasn't it? And so I put a lot of plants in. Again, I'd love you to come visit. I do a whole series of little talks called Common Sense Gardening. We made gardening way too difficult. We got 7 books on gardening for dummies. I mean, come on, it's not that hard. And but anyway, one of the things I do is I put plant on top of plant. But there's ground covers underneath there in the spring, and then other things come through. You see clematis on the left, see maples on the right. But so I don't know. I don't know if any questions. I know we're just keeping to the end. I'm just talking to myself. So I hope somebody's responding. So that now we have this area. These are taken through the last 5, 6, 7 years. Who knows? But that last one was exactly what you come here pretty much now. It looks pretty much the same. Let's talk about a few plants that make a yard into a garden. Okay, remember, you don't have a yard. I mean, maybe you have a yard. I shouldn't say that. Maybe you do have a yard, but a yard, by definition, I don't want to hear about your yard, because by definition, a yard is where prisoners exercise. We are making our yard into a garden. So that is what we are doing. And that is what you want to do, I hope. I don't know if you do or not. So let's make this yard into a garden. Let's put some things in. What makes a yard into a garden? Well, annuals, shrubs, perennials, climbers, ground covers, foodscaping. I don't have enough. It is a small garden. I didn't tell you that 900 square foot house is now 1650 or 1700 square feet. Perfect for the two of us. But I live in a 60 by 100 residential lot. Okay, so it is a small garden. There is no acreage. It is 60 by 100. So you're looking at what I'm looking when I'm sitting on my deck. And that's just enough for me. It's perfect. That's part of the downsizing too. So foodscaping, I don't have room for a vegetable garden. I put a tomato or 2 in, but I love vegetables from the point of view of what they can look like. So there's that purple fennel. And I put in a tomato, I put in basil, I put in things that I like the look of, and it's a bonus if I eat them. I don't really care. But I love foodscaping. And then, of course, small trees. So those are the kind of things that make a yard into a garden. And the last one, of course, birds. I'm all over birds in the garden. These are squirrel-proof bird feeders. They drink out of that's my water feature, by the way. My $100,000 super waterfall water feature is a bird bath with a little thingamajiggy that goes around and makes the water move. Battery operated, I may add. So that's the garden. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Well, hold on. I got something here. I want to try to see if I can move out of here. How do I move this thing? Probably going to screw everything up here now. So if I do, I apologize. Okay, so I'm going to do some things. And again, if you have that handout or want the handout, it's all written down, so you don't have to remember a thing. But I'm going to start off with a few small trees. And remember, it's a small garden. So what am I going to do? Well, I actually did put a very large elm in, which is now about 70 feet tall. This is it's not a shade garden in any stretch of the imagination, but it is a shaded garden. I get some full sun, but so how about, oh boy, oh dear. Okay. So here's some small trees, Japanese maples. I'm all over Japanese maples. This is in the spring, and this one is called Otaha. Now, how do you find these things? You may have mail order, you may whatever, maybe your local whatever. But I found them. If I find them, you can find them. I love Japanese maples. So I love them for the spring color, like orange magic. I love them for the depth and just the beautiful form, like emerald lace. They just get better over time. Coral bark. I mean, I love coral bark maple in the fall. Look at the flower. You have better color than I do. I mean, by the way, Athens, Georgia is in the foothills of the Smokies, okay? So we're not in the mountains by any stretch. We're about an hour. But at least we have 4 seasons. We get nice falls, fabulous springs. Summers are hot. What else is new? Winters are easy. So, and you can tell from my accent, I'm not from Kentucky or the hills of anywhere. I'm from Montreal, Canada. So it took a whole long time for me to get the hang of this thing. But I can't go any further south. My body won't let me. But I love my fall color, and this is about as good as it gets anywhere. And there's another one. This is all in my garden, by the way. This little Villa Toronto has fabulous, fabulous fall color, which I just love. This is actually for us October, November, and in the winter we got the coral barks. But I'm looking at this again. I'm sitting there looking at this, and in the summer, or excuse me, in the winter, outside in the front, there's a yellow bark one called Bihu. So again, don't worry too much about getting everything and anything, but gosh, that's why when I talk to my daughters and they're becoming sort of gardeners, but they have too many kids, too little money, too little time for sure. I always say Japanese maples is a no-brainer. And I know that maybe up in northern Kentucky, it's a little bit, nah, you can grow these things. Witch hazel is always a treat. Here's one called Whistly Supreme, witch hazel's in the spring. Oops. And of course, here's Arnold Promise, it's just anybody, you can find Arnold Promise anywhere. So another small tree I love are all of these red buds. There's so many fabulous red buds. Rising Sun is very interesting. It turns out it has some problems, so I no longer have it. But there's other fabulous red buds. I don't dislike it. I see it all over the place. It's beautiful. And again, you can tell where you are. You're in my back garden. So the small trees, and there's just 2 or 3 of them. We could do a whole talk on small trees for the garden. We could do a whole talk on shrubs for the garden. I look forward to every year. I look forward to them. Here's Deutzia. Now Deutzia is just a great shrub. And this one called Chardonnay Pearls. So it has golden foliage in the spring. It has pearly white flowers also. This is what, May, I guess. You're giving me a little later than me. It doesn't matter what it's in the spring. And I use it for other things as well, which you will see. So I love shrubs. There's one I always do. Hydrangeas. I hate the mop heads. I can't grow them. I'm terrible at it. So I do what I call the limelight types, the hydrangea paniculata. This is in Athens. This isn't my garden. Obviously, it's down the street. But I tuck these ones into my small garden. And this one has been just spectacular. One called White Wedding. It comes out of the Southern Living program. You can see it here when the flowers are new, and you can see it here in September. This is a week ago or 2 weeks here. Wow, a week ago. Well, yeah, September. So you can see the flowers still look good. You can see the rudbeckias and all that other stuff that's in. That may have been, it was very early September, probably the 1st, about a week or so ago. So you can see how much I love the hydrangea. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but over there, is another one. I put 2 or 3 of them in. They're small, i.e. they're not limelights, and I whack them to the ground every year. Again, the whole common sense gardening theme I do on pruning is it's just dead easy. But anyway, so there's a couple of shrubs. Here's another one. I have to have my Edgeworthia. Edgeworthia is Chinese paper plant. You just if you don't know what it is, just get it. Okay, it's beauty all season long. And maybe some of you are getting a little cold, but I don't think so. And you can see again, this is pretty ugly back there. I don't know what it is, what season that is. It's probably it's in the fall. It's in the fall because if you look closely at that plant, it's got buds on it. So it's budding up now. And then it flowers in February or March with these fragrant, spectacular yellow flowers. Fragrance all over the garden. So this is February. You can see I got some containers with nothing in them. I got a deck with nobody on it. But it's just a no-brainer. So just see if you can grow it. Kelly can tell you if you can grow it or not, wherever you might be. But it's a fabulous plant if you can. And I won't say it's easy to find, but it certainly isn't rare. And the last one, I think, a couple of shrubs. This is the earliest one in my garden. It's flowering almond. It's a prunus. It's hardy, and it's so you can see that's in the pecan bed, and really very little is up. A couple of creeping jennies and things, but that's in full flower in February, March here. Whenever spring is, it's going to be your first spring thing. And a ton of new butterfly bushes. Butterfly bush have just gone crazy. Everybody knows butterfly bush. I don't have a clock, Kelly, so keep me on time. There are a ton of new ones out there, but again, I'm giving you my opinion. You don't have to believe a word I say. In fact, I probably wouldn't. But for large flowered, but compact, because they can get really leggy and big and ugly. I love this Pugster pink. And it really does have large flowers. So the Pugster series, and a series simply means a group of plants that are similar in every way except flower color. Now, that's the idea. It may not be exactly so, but so there's Pugster blue and Pugster something else, but I like the pink the best. I think it performs the best. However, a late frost will knock it out, as I found out this year. So we had late frost, but that's okay. I'm happy to replace it. But then again, something else is growing in its place right now. I don't know where I put it. So Pugster pink. Now, how about this? How about this? I have been waiting forever. I love grape myrtles, but they're big. I showed you a tree in my garden. I'll show it to you again. It's 30 feet tall. I mean, that's all well and good. There's only so many of those you can use. The breeders are taking crepe myrtle. Heck, they're going to make bedding plants out of them within 2 years. But this is shrubs. These are in containers, you can see. So these are no more than 3 feet tall. This is Cherry Delight. There's another one called French Vanilla, and it's called the Great Myrtle series. And there's a whole bunch out there now. I mean, there's some good ones. There's I'll think of it. Other series as well. But here's the 2 new ones. I'm showing you some of the new stuff. That's probably 2 years old, and they're in my garden now. In the garden itself. This is in the trial gardens at the University of Georgia, which you must come and see. Spectacular place. But the Great Myrtle program. So just hunt for those. And I love them. I just love this idea. And the last small shrub-ish, not so small, is of course the bottlebrush buckeye. And this is one called Rogers form. You can see the size of the flowers. They are immense. And that's just at the end of our garden. In fact, that was probably last year, maybe this year, I don't know. It grows, and you can cut things back and cut things down. And I'm a big, like those crepe myrtles, cut it to the ground. I just cut it to the ground every year, or maybe at least 6 inches. So they just flower. And they always stay small that way. If you don't want to do that, they will get bigger, but they're never going to get into a tree. Okay, let's move on from shrubs. Roses. There's terrible things going on with rose rosette. I know that Kelly's dealing with, everybody's dealing with rose rosette, but people still love roses. So I'm just going to show you a couple. Nobody wants to deal with dirty roses. Dirty mean black spot, mildew, etc. That rose rosette thing is on every rose, or potentially on every rose. It's not just knockouts. The only reason you see them on knockouts so much is because there's so many knockouts around. But the fact is, there must be something other than knockouts, as terrific as they are, and there are. And I'm going to just show you a couple, maybe more than a couple. I'm not a big rose person. So the only rose I really want is something that's clean, as you can see by the foliage here, um, preferably looking like a rose, and even better if it smells like a rose. You know, knockouts don't have any fragrance to speak of. Most roses these days don't. But this is one called the Brindabella series. And so Brindabella, just there's 2 or 3 or 4 colors. This is one I really like called Purple Prince. Just get it. It's big. I mean, it's big. It's at least waist high, if not bigger. But it's great, and it's so fragrant. And there's other ones. Here's one called Dawn. Again, same fragrance with a different color. But the best one for sure is this Purple Prince. Dwarf roses. I love these dwarf ones called Sun Rosa. That's in my garden. I don't know what year that is. I still have it. It's clean, it's small, and it's, it's knee high at very most. So there's a couple of roses that, I got 2 or 3 really roses I just love. But I also thought we should try and do a few roses because I like climbing things. Well, I told you I have a small garden. I can fill it up. Hell, I could fill it up with creeping Jenny. I could fill it up with, just ground covers. And the fact is I do. When I build my garden, I say build it. People ask me, what do you do? I say, well, first of all, start small. And of course, that's one of the major deals I have. It's small. We'll talk about deer later. I know some of you have questions and I'll mention that too. But the fact is we've got a garden. So I put ground covers and I put a shrub in the ground covers and I put a climber on the shrub and then I put a climber on the climber. So, in a certain area, you can do a 360 and see about 20 plants, but that's me. So I'm going to start with some of my favorite climbing roses. Now, I'm not a big rose person, so they got to work. In fact, if you come today, some of these climbing roses are no longer with us. But one of the things I like to do is put them through trees. So this, believe it or not, is a crepe myrtle, but it's before the crepe myrtles have come out. All right. So and I chose an early spring flowering rose. So I had to be early because I wanted it flowering when you could see it. And then the crepe myrtle leaves come and you don't see it anymore. And that was cool. I like that. It's anemone. It's still around, but I put another one in instead. Well, anyway, that's what you do when you're a gardener. When you're a gardener, you got to be brutal. Just have fun brutally. Anyway, that's cool. And then I started with this other little dainty climbing rose. If you're a rose person, you know about Cecile Bruner. She's been around forever. She's kind of a double flowered, fragrant, small flowered, but my goodness, don't let the word dainty fool you. She is a brute. So you remember that coral bark maple I showed you? Well, that's her going through the coral bark maple. And that's that Deutzia Chardonnay pearls to the left. So she's planted there somewhere and she's just doing her thing. And I don't know if you like this kind of stuff. You might like it much more formal. That's fine. And I like formal gardens, sort of ish. My wife surely does. But I also I just like to look at new things. And so there we go. Where am I going to put it? There's where I put it. But she is a brute, and there she is. She's running along the house. She's the one now in that crepe myrtle. So I have 2. I actually ended up taking one out. So she's running along the house as well, and that's really kind of cool, but it is very pretty. And that's her going through the coral bark maple. Cecile Bruner, but it's thorny. It's a brute. It's certainly not pleasant to work with. So you just got to get out of the way. So, but I like the mini climbers. So the mini climbers are those that climb fence high, let's just call it. And you can cut them back. And here's one called Winter Circle, which I really like. And you can see it's clean. I don't know when that was, sometime. And then the person who bred Knockout also bred a couple of little mini climbers. This one's called High Wire Flyer. And again, for me, it's not knocking my socks off, but it's clean, disease-free, and it's in the back. So those things you're seeing are in the back of the garden, the back of the 6 foot, 4 foot garden. So it's not exactly that far back. But anyway, there's a couple for you if you like that. And of course, if you can, everybody's favorite, if you can, is Lady Banks. Oh my gosh. But again, if you can't, don't worry about it. Just come and see mine. Here's Lady Banks growing. That's the peach tree I showed you. As a peach tree got bigger, so did Lady Banks. But the nice thing about our house, and again, I showed you what we did. We put lots of windows, so we actually brought the garden inside. I can see that from inside, but that's my view of Japanese maple on the deck with Lady Banks out there. So bringing a lady in. Of course, she's thornless and she's easy to work with, but again, she'll take over the world if you let her. In fact, she did take over the world, and I've had to trim her a wee bit, shall we say. You know, it's called working in the garden for a reason. I mean, it is work, but it's hopefully work you enjoy. I don't like cutting roses down. Believe me, I hate it. But you know, you get yourself dressed and away you go. So those are some roses, but you know, you can't live by roses alone. I just love climbers. I did a whole book on climbers. I think a couple of you ordered it, I think. And it's out of print, so it's hard for me to get. So if you're going to order it, I probably won't have it, but I'll get it for you. But here's clematis. I love clematis. I went through a clematis stage of life. Here's Raguchi, that blue one with black-eyed Susan vine, and it's, God, I don't know what it's growing on. It's growing on something. No, I think the Raguchi is on a kind of a clematis stand or a metal thing, and then the black-eyed Susan grew through the Raguchi. But the Raguchi's number one clematis in my mind. Well, number one tied with one I'm about to show you. Here's a white one, Haldine. That's growing through the witch hazel I showed you. And that's really pretty. But this is the other one that is just spectacular. It's called Solano. This thing keeps flowering. It must flower for 2-3 months. It's, again, I'm sort of, you got the garden in your head. I don't know if you do. That's the tree is, again, the poor old coral bark. It just gets eaten up by everything. So it goes through the coral bark, but also looks great. And I just think that's a great plant. And here you see it going through the coral bark maple. So again, that's Solana. And where do you get it? Oh, by the way, on the app, if you go to the app and you go to, I don't know, climbers, for example, and then you go to clematis, I have an online source for clematis, an online source for bulbs, an online source for perennials. You know, shop locally by all means. Please shop locally. But if you can't find it, I've put some sources on there. And you may even be able to get a discount if you use my name. I can't remember. There's one growing through the Edgeworthia. Nothing is safe in my garden. Nothing. So that's why I say I multi-layer things. I just multi everything. It's an all-season garden. There's always something happening because I want to always have something to look forward to. There's a native azalea in there somewhere, and there's another plant going through it. And then, of course, you have to have something just for fun for the kids or whatever else. I mean, moon vine brightens up the evening. I got some other, I like to do, Kelly, get me back someday. I'll do the whole stories and show you the magic primrose and the moon vines and all this thing. Okay, so as I think I said, kids love it. Everybody loves it. And then, you know, again, there's the same fence, the same place. So I just go wander around and keep drinking my wine. That's why they look so good. I don't know. So enough of this climbing stuff. We'll hope you can handle a few more ideas. I am getting along here, so we are not going to keep you all day. And if I said, can you handle a few more ideas? I'd expect the whole audience to go, yes, 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 more, more, more. So I hope you are. But if you can't, feel free to leave. So we're going to play with a few unusual things. How about some unusual bulbs? It's fall. We're all looking at bulbs now. What are we going to order? Well, how about Zephyranthes, called the rain lily? I love these things. You know, where do I put them? Man, you just come over, man. They're just stuck between and betwixt. So there's the pink one called Zephyranthes rosea, which is lovely. I love it, but it's not nearly as easy, at least for me, as the next one, which is the white one, Zephyranthes candida. This is the one, if you don't know what to buy this one. Okay, so these come up in big clumps and they really are fun. They're flowering now, by the way, but they might flower a little bit later, or they flower or earlier, I should say. My neighbor or my friend has these things, like literally 100 square feet of these damn things, and they're just spectacular. So I go in the dead of night with my shovel and steal a few. But anyway, that's the best way, by the way, to get plants from your friends, hopefully not stealing them. So there's that's a rain lily. And it's called that because it does come up after a rain, but it comes up, it does things anyway. A couple of other little, they're certainly, they're not unknown at all, but they're kind of not even new, but depending who I'm talking to. This is one called Iphion, otherwise known as the blue starflower. This one called Whistly Blue, the most common. Then the one that I really like even better is this one. Doesn't look a whole lot different in these pictures, but this is called Rolf Fiedler. Doesn't flower nearly as much, but it's a bluer blue. You can see here's my garden. There's Iphion going through strawberry begonia, which is probably going through something else. So there's always something going on. And I hope you don't find this too difficult. Anyway, Rolf Fiedler, and here's a little bowl I've discovered when I was doing work with cut flowers. It's called Brodia. It's got a bunch of names, and this is one called Queen Fabiola. And this is in my neighbor's. I gave him these. They look better in his place than mine. Isn't that the way you give stuff away? And it always looks better there. But it's a pretty little plant, and it flowers springish, late springish. But you know, we need some height at times. I love my summer lilies. This is my summertime stuff now. Now you can see some plants in the back. You can just recognize my fence, so you know you're still here. Anastasia is really easy to find. They're inexpensive. Here's Satisfaction. I got Satisfaction from this thing. You can order through any number of bulb companies. You're probably getting their catalogs now. I usually put 3 or 4 together. I always put 3 of something together if I can afford it, or if I can get it. Lilies, you know, they last for me. And again, it's hot. It's too hot for lilies as far as longevity, but they'll last 4 or 5 years, depending. Some will last longer, some will last less. But there's a couple. That's about a 4 foot tall. Here is what, I don't know, this thing is 15 feet tall. It's called Leslie Woodruff. I've got rebar up there. I don't know if you can see it. I'm almost on a ladder just to hook it up. But it's pretty and it flowers now. Well, it's of course, all of the lilies are finished now. And then it's a Formosa lily, which is again literally 15 feet tall. But that's crazy. I mean, these are just nutso plants, but they're fun to have. That's all. I mean, as I said, it's gardening, it's fun. Who cares? But I don't know if I have the Formosa lily anymore. I certainly have the Leslie Woodruff. My favorite lily, of course, you can get this now just about any catalog. It's called Forever Susan. And of course, you should get this because not only is it beautiful, it's an Asiatic type. All those other ones are Oriental types. It's called Forever Susan because I named it, and I named it for my lovely wife, Susan. So, and if your name is Susan, who I know there's some Susans here, just call it your own if you like. But Forever Susan, it's beautiful, and that's exactly what it looks like. So there's a few bulbs. We can take a deep breath. We're almost, well, not almost, but we're getting there. Okay, deep breath. Let's see what we got next. Well, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but being from Canada, where we have a lot of snow, ice, whatever else, but so gardening is very important. So we want to have as much color as we can for, because it's a little shorter than what we have where you and I are. So window box, I just love window boxes. So I always have fun with window boxes. Just stick all sorts of stuff in there and let them go. These get a lot of sun, so I can put some sun things in. But what those window boxes sort of let me do now is sort of talk to you a little bit about annuals. And I don't want anybody to be a snob, please. Annuals. I don't care if it's an annual, a perennial, a shrub, a bulb. It's fun. It's for the garden. So I always sticking annuals in because let's face it, gaps appear. Plants go dormant. Heck, they die. No matter what I do, some of these plants just say enough of that, and they just disappear. So I'll put in annuals, and I'll put in annuals some early, but mostly later summer. This alternanthera, Jacob's coat, called Little Ruby, is the best annual in the world for that purple color. You can see again the garden. That's up top there. You can see the red bud, and oh my goodness, you got all sorts of stuff here. I don't recognize some of this stuff. And so I do love annuals. But here's some shade annual. That's a sun annual. Here's, which I love. This is canary wings. This is like dragon wings, which all of you know, but the golden form. And there's a very, very shady area in my garden. So it lights up the garden. And I'm sitting on the deck, I can see those. We lost impatiens for a number of years because of downy mildew. We now have some downy mildew resistant forms. If you're going to get impatiens, go to some place that actually has a label that says more than 4-inch annual. I have no problem with box stores, but boy, I hate their labels. It's because you don't know what you're getting. This one's called Beacon, and Beacon is resistant. And in fact, you're probably getting Beacon anyway, because nobody was buying impatiens for years because, what's the point? So just about now, just about everything is Beacon or Amara or anything new. The Sun series of impatiens are all resistant to downy mildew. But I love my impatiens. I got them all over the place. Sunflowers are just getting better. Containers or garden. This is Sunbelievable. That's in our trial garden. And I love reseeders. So reseeders are like here's fragrant flowering tobacco right there. And it just comes up when it feels like it. And it has all sorts of flowers and it doesn't come up. I have no idea if I'm ever going to get it. I planted them once and so they come up and then they don't. In fact, I haven't seen them for a year or so. So maybe it's time to plant them again. But I just throw stuff in like that. And of course, the best one, I couldn't be without my larkspur. And I'm always giving seeds to people. Larkspur, there's a pecan bed, right? I don't know what year that was, or, whatever. And but look at those things; they're just fantastic. And what a year it has been for poppies. So if you want the reseeders, just get these things from friends. You can go buy this stuff, of course. Buy a few plants if you like, and they'll reseed for themselves. But I guarantee you, if you have somebody who has poppies, you can get 1,000 seeds, in a tiny little bag. So don't, and that's half the fun of gardening is sharing. So it's been a banner year. This was this spring, by the way. You can see the larkspur in the background, and Lord knows what else. So it's good. It's kind of fun for me to do this because I can look at stuff throughout the season. I actually see some old friends that have disappeared. And this may be a good time to finish this voyage up. Let's just talk about a few perennials. We could do this all day, as you know. We can just do this all day. So the hostas, okay, what about deer? Well, in the back where you are right now, I have fencing, okay? It's a small garden, I can do it. And I put up some pretty cheap fencing in one whole area, it keeps them out. There's nothing spectacular about this fencing. In the front where the pecan bed is just a ton of deer, and I spray with liquid fence. But I would not put a hosta out front. I just won't, because why tempt them? But, I have some things that they might like, but not so many. I know what deer like and don't like. Go to the app. It's all there. Plants that deer don't like. Probably the Extension Service of Kentucky has a list very similar. But there's my garden. There's your canary wings in the back. A Japanese maple, that's Anastasia. Lily on the left. And a really, really ugly hydrangea to the right, which I just hate. And then there's hostas. There's Coast to Coast, which is a really good one. It reflects the canary wing colors. Whoops. And then if you want something big, how about Empress Wu? There's another Wu out there as well, but she's big. She really is big. They tolerate shade. I have mine in a different place. Gets a little bit too much sun. It looks a little freaky right now, but it's fun. It comes up and it does well. How about the golden bleeding heart? Oh my God. It's so spectacular. But unfortunately for me, and maybe for you it will, it doesn't persist. I get 2 years out of it, maybe. For you, if you can get 3-4 years, this is just spectacular. I know up in New York, it's just everywhere. I don't even know where to begin with hellebores. If you don't do hellebores, you're not gardening because it's the best spring thing forever. Deer don't touch it. You have a ton of hellebores in the front garden. All the hellebore flowers that are being bred now are all upright, and the flower and the foliage now are hybrids. So there's nothing wrong with Hellebores orientalis. That's great. But they're getting some, well, you can go on the app, you can see this thing called Black Death. But these ones don't seem to get it. I don't know where to begin. There's that beautiful, look at these variegated hostas. This is Penny's Pink. This is again in the same bed. There's that strawberry begonia thing I mentioned. There's an Iphion thing I mentioned. And there's a hellebore behind it and a hellebore growing right through it. That's called Rihanna's Ruby. This is all called Frost Kiss series, and you can get them online. Again, if you can't find them, go on my app. The perennialfarmmarketplace.com sells these, and they're cool. Rihanna's ruby in the back, Glenda's gloss in the front. These are all in the pecan, but you can see how early they are. The narcissus, the daffodils are flowering. So that's when they're up. And I'll just finish up with hellebores because there's just so many fabulous ones. Ice and roses is the other one that's really, really caught on. So there's a whole lot of colors of those as well. And I put some in this fall, or it's actually summer. So we'll see how they're doing this spring. And again, I could do a whole hellebore talk, but let's not do that. So many of our perennials are native, into the whole native shtick. Great plants as well. The bloodroot, of course, is always spectacular. The Heliopsis, many of the daisies are natives, are spectacular. One called Burning Hearts. And oh my gosh, I'm just stuffed with yellow wood poppies. And that's in the pecan bed as well. That's Stylophyllum. You can see hellebores to the left, hellebores behind it. This thing flowers well, that's probably hellebore. So that's probably in March and flowers well into July. And they reseed themselves all over the place. Okay, we're getting there. Echinaceas, I'm not sure how many more I can stand, but these are natives. They're all nativars, by the way, cultivars of native plants. Kismet's white is as good as a white gets, and there's powwows and artisans. There's a whole slew of them. I don't have to tell you, but for me and for my daughters, keep them purple or white if you want to be sure you're going to succeed. Once you get the hang of those, then go to the more fancy ones. Purples and whites are simply tougher. Our native rudbeckias keep getting better. There's American Gold Rush. That's a perennial plant, 2023 plant of the year. So you're going to see a lot of that. And another one that's just spectacular called Glitters Like Gold. We are finishing up, I promise, because I'm getting tired of hearing myself. So, but as I say, I could do this all day. So you just got to come and do a little trip here. Come on, do a little walkabout with me. Epimediums, love epimediums. This is one called Sagittatum, little flowers, big leaves. And here's my favorite, of course, pink champagne. Foliage is really quite special, but look at the flowers. They are really spectacular. So these are kind of ground covers. I've kind of given you a whole lot of stuff. I've not given you a whole lot of stuff as well, but hopefully this is keeping your interest into maybe one or two of these things you want to try this spring. Fall is time for planting as well. So hopefully we're at good timing. And as I say, we could do this all day. But there's a digitalis, there's that sunrose, there's creeping jenny, there's euchorella, there's an orchid called Bleatilla, there's coreopsis. I mean, there's just whatever. And there's a Japanese maple you can see. Who knows what's in there? I don't even know what's in there. So that's that. Remember that we started with a house that had nothing, absolutely nothing. And yeah, sure, it's taken me, this is 10 years old or 9 years old. But it's given me so much pleasure. Thank goodness we have a garden. So we could be here all day, but it's time to bid you a fond farewell. And along with that farewell is an invitation to visit the Garden of Chaos and Contentment, because you will always be welcome. So with that, I simply say, thank you, and the end.